Hi, I'm Gary, and this is Military Illumination, a podcast where we uncover the truth behind the military enlistment experience. We talk about things that basically the military and their government doesn't want new recruits or people in the military to know about. Today, I just want to have a simple conversation over a cup of coffee, maybe hopefully answer some of your questions, but really just provide just a down to earth conversation to spur interest or to at least put the thoughts into your mind so that you may ask further additional questions or at least become aware of the possibilities. I'm not here to try to say the military is bad. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying if you're planning on going to the military, I just want that is just simply understand what you're getting yourself into. It's very critical at this point in the process that you make an informed decision. So, with that being said, I'm gonna have a sip of my coffee, and we'll get started. And today we're gonna have a simple conversation about, I would say, the three nasties in the military is the post-traumatic stress disorder, sexual assaults, and suicides. I had to turn my phone off because I kept getting notifications. Anyways, the thing a person want to understand about the military experience is that it's not like a normal job. You're going to be exposed to things that you thought would never be possible, or something that you never would have thought would happen. You will see things and be exposed to things that will have a lasting effect on you. That's the first thing you want to understand is that in order that you in the military, you're going to have these experiences that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. Their degree and intensity is based on your situation and what you're involved in and what you were exposed to. It could be something that's very simple as a passing memory from time to time, or your experience could be something so violent that every night as you sleep, you can't sleep because it is reoccurring. Something so intense, so violent that it angers you. And anger comes out in many ways where it would impact your life, impact your family, impact people who love you. That's the reality of it. And I think post-traumatic stress disorder in and of itself is just a delayed reaction. Now, let me get my here before. I'm talking from a perspective of just a layperson, the simple understanding of it. I'm not trying to diagnose it or give you medical facts, but I'm coming from a position of a person who has it, who's witnessed it, who's heard about it, and also researched it. It's up to you to dig deeper. That's the main thing, and it's always going to be to dig deeper. If you're dealing with the military, if you're going to recruiter, always dig deeper. Someone tells you something about the military, dig deeper, especially if they don't tell you the bad side. Okay? So now I'm going to get back to it. We all experience things that may be like trigger as post-traumatic stress disorder, even in civilian life. It's a car accident. I believe first responders probably experience it, right? People of sexual trauma, domestic violence, okay? Growing up, it's all around us. It's everywhere. And what I would think the difference would be is identifying it and treating it. In the civilian world, a lot of times, if you go to a very stressful situation, that's part of the healing. That's part of the process of people your social services, the people that were helping you. That's going to be something they're going to suggest right away, right? That and medication, if they go hand in hand. However, in the military, you got to understand that's counter to what you should be. And what I mean is counter is that it's almost a taboo to admit that there's something wrong with you when you're in the military. I would say it's taboo to even talk about mainly having mental health issues or concerns. So therefore, that in and of itself is going to isolate a person. It's going to delay treatment, delay the process, and in many cases, not even get the help they need. I think when the military, my dad was in the military, and for a long time, Vietnam vets, our government wouldn't admit that was an issue. And so we have all these people coming back from Vietnam or from these war zones and not being treated, not being taken, not being provided with the stuff they need. And then they turn to self-medication, which through alcohol and drugs and things of that nature. So in the military, there's a stigma about being broken, okay? About maybe if you got medical issues, mental health issues, there's a stigma about that. And the doctors, I would say, and would be pretty much there. It's a close knit. Their job is to keep you in the unit as much as possible, I believe. For them, it's the same thing with the law. Same thing with JAG. If the JAG was there to do their job, they'll be getting people off. Soldiers will be getting off on these charges. They will be able to sue their commanders. They can be able to bring up legal action, but they can't. That's not good. That doesn't work for a strong military. And it's the same thing with medical. The doctors cannot prescribe this situation, prescribe the treatment they need if it's going to take you off the battlefield, out of the units. They're probably more likely to just downplay the diagnosis, heavily medicated, than to deal with it. So when you're going into the military, you're thinking about it, or if you're in, you understand that the treatments that's available to you is very limited in nature. And if you do get it, it's going to come with a stigma about it. Therefore, and then eventually it's going to impact your enlistment. And that's what it is. I keep saying a lot of but I apologize. But if you can picture this, that you're going in, you're having issues, mental health issues with flashbacks and with PTSD type of symptoms, and they tell you there's nothing wrong with you and they send you back. Or they accuse you of just trying to ride the system. Or when you get back to your unit with a doctor that prescribed the right treatment, a protocol, and your unit commanders and your unit leadership denounce it, make a mockery of you, tell you, mistreat you, basically. And chances if they get a chance, they're going to sideline you with consequences, retaliation. You might be isolated by the others in your unit. I would say I experienced this when I was in. I was on my second surgery, and it was orthoscopic. And I came back. I was on crutches. I was on bed rest. I had light duty, and they tried to get me to violate my profile. They did a lot of things to me and talked about me. That's my command. But I stood my ground. My treatment was better for me, was more important to me than what they were thinking. And then I remember I told my first sergeant, his name is First Sergeant Gutierrez. I still remember that rascal. When I told him, he says, Tarver, he says, if you get this P3 profile, that's going to hurt you for a promotion to 7. To this day, I told him I didn't care. I was getting out anyways, which probably the worst thing I could have done, right? Because I know they called up my next unit, which was in Fort Lewis. It was interesting. It was very interesting. I'm digressing, but one thing I did run into, like I said before, the retaliation and that things they do to you. The officer, my platoon leader, was my EER. It was flat out lies. It was a bad EER. There was nothing that substantiated. And when I went to my battalion sergeant major, he said point blank, there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah, we know it's not right. We know it's lies, but I can't make him change it. Had I been decided to stay in the military, that would have hurt me. That would have derailed my whole career. And up to that point was stellar. I'm not gonna keep going into it, but I most of my promotions in the secondary zone. I had a good career, so it was not that I had a good career, got an honorable discharge, right? But that is what we're talking about right there, and you've seen it happen to a lot of soldiers. So when you're in, you know that if you get hurt, you're through. Let that sink in. You can be a good soldier, you can be a good sailor, Marine, airman, If you come up with medical issues, mental health issues, you're done. Your career is done. Imagine that if you got 15, 16 years in and you're trying to retire, that's going to derail you. Chances are you won't retire. They're going to boot you out, get rid of you. 16 years of nothing. They won't even give you a piece of cake. You're out on your tushy with nothing. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. So the other thing the other nasty would be sexual assaults, sexual abuse, right? People say, well, you do your research and it says about 2023, 16% in the military that was reported sexual assaults. And a lot of those came from within the command, the chain of command. So people say, okay, what's it, 16%? No big deal. But until you look at it, and this is a mixture of women and men, so don't just think it's just women, right? It's both. But the 16% was women. What that equated to at that numbers of enlistment at that time was about 30,000, about 15,000 people that was sexually assaulted, discriminated against, whatever, abuse. And that probably does anything from, it really encompasses everything. About 13 to 15,000. That was just in 2023. People say, oh, that's not a whole lot when you think about the whole, this was the Army. Oh yeah, by the way, this is just the Army. This number was just the Army, okay? The people say, that's no big deal. It's just 13, 15,000. But think about it. It happens in civilian life, right? But this is within an enlistment. This is maybe within a 4-year enlistment period. These are defined enlistment times. It does happen in civilian. The difference is it happens in civilian life. You have legal recourse and legal action. And usually the perpetrator is going to go to jail. But you're going to have recourse. In the military, you don't. So they don't tell you about that. And according to some resources I've looked at, the average age of the women that are sexually assaulted is between 18 and 24. Let that sink in. In most cases, a lot of times it mentions that it happens during the training scenario within the instructional time. It also happens within the unit as well. Let that sink in. He's talking about high school girls who go into the military and probably by the time they're 20, they've been sexually assaulted. This is just the 13 to 15, the 16% they talked about was just the ones that reported. Let that sink in. Just the ones that were reported. And of those that were reported, like in civilian life, a lot of times the victim becomes the one on trial. They have to deal with consequences. They have to deal with things like retaliation, because if it's within their command and they're bringing it up, they're going to get retaliated against. They're going to get isolated. And in a lot of cases, these are the things that end up with the suicides. Kids having suicide. There's nowhere to turn. In the military, you got to realize there's nowhere to turn. And as I mentioned before, it's a closed-in system. The Ferris Doctrine protects these perpetrators and these officers, right? The communications with is very limited. So even if a person was sexually assaulted and brought it up to their congressperson for help, nothing's going to be happening. I mentioned that before in some of my other episodes. Your congressperson is there to serve the country in a way with appropriations. They're not there to protect the soldiers or the sailors or airmen and the Coast Guard guys and ladies. Okay, they're not there. That's not their. In fact, they're the ones that prevent them from suing the government or holding them accountable, the military accountable. That's the terrorists, and I mentioned that before. They're the ones that said that they can't do it. So when you're looking at the military from perspective, what don't they want you to know? They don't want you to know about the incidence of PTSD and the probability that you become infected. They don't want you to know about the numerous cases of sexual assaults. Okay, and that anywhere from fondling, I guess, to rape, to even the point to where it's just unwanted behavior. Then finally, there's a suicide. I'm gonna keep this short because I don't want to downplay it to the point to where I don't want to disservice it. One thing you would understand is that it happens, and it happens more frequently than people realize. And I believe that it happens based on the things we talked about before. The sexual assaults, the trauma of PTSD, not being able to get the help they need, feeling isolated, and nowhere else to turn. And it's an issue. It's a mental health issue that is not being addressed. Even the veterans that get out, it's still there. A lot of them who commit suicide. It's a lot. It's everybody. It's at one point in time, even me. It's a constant battle. It's important that they get treatment. It's important that they get services. But a lot of times, there is a stigma about that. It's about getting help, asking for it. It's hard to admit that you're broken emotionally and mentally. You're broken, but that's the only way. And a lot of that is pushed by the military. I mean, a lot of service members, people who are in the service, they self-medicate. Drugs, alcohol, probably just abuse, lashing out, domestic violence, anger. I'm not here to diagnose anything, but I'm just telling you what is normal, what's common sense. You can't do what you do in the military. And it's just a lot of different levels. And I think that's kind of why recruitment, retention is so low. Yeah, they come in, but they can't keep people because they finally seen behind the curtain and they've seen the lies and they lived the life. They lived it, and it's just, and people don't stay. Man, goodness, it was, shoot, man. Even with me, I wanted out 6 months into the gig. I stayed longer, and that's because I don't know, didn't know any better as a young person. But, or maybe I always tell myself that I was in there for a reason, and I'm doing the reason now, was to see the ugliness, experience the challenges, and then speak up about it. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of things on the internet, there's a lot of YouTubers or prior service members are out there sharing their story. If you just listen, if you just Google it, if you just search for it. Now, you just take that information and think about it and just decide what you want to do. So the three nasties, I call them the nasties because it's nasty. It's that if a person does not understand what's in there and it happens and they're exposed to it, there's a good chance that they're thinking there is an isolated incident and they're alone and it's only happening to them. I would say that even with National Guard situation in Washington National Guard and my friend, had we known what we were actually up against, if we were able to see those ghosts, if you would, then we probably would have taken different action, or probably wouldn't have heard it as much. Incident, the friend that was dealt with harshly and unethically and maliciously prosecuted by Brett Dockery in the Washington National Guard in 1998 is dealing with a lot of PTSD issues related to that. And they cannot hold a job. They're on medication, but that's what we're talking about. That's what happens. And I think the first thing they're going to talk about when you bring these things up, especially at the recruiting table, or they're going to say, oh, no, that's not the case. You can go to the IG, Inspector General, tell them your story. Don't do it. Oh, you can go to your chaplain and share, and they'll help you. Don't tell them. You can write your congressman and get their help. Don't do it. Okay. These are all the things. There's if you feel like you're getting discriminated against, there's the equal opportunity officer and enlisted person. And you see, don't do it, because here's the picture I want you to see. All these people are under the same conviction. But that's a good word or not. The same curse. We can probably use the same curse. They're under the same curse. Their whole aim is to support the officers, support the system. You cannot support the system and help the soldier and help the enlisted person at the same time, because helping means there's a problem and there's a counter to what the organization, the Department of the Defense or whatever, I think they call it something else now, but I'm old school. It's still the Department of Defense. I don't care what they say. Anyways, it's counter to it. Treatment is expensive. Treatment is expensive. And so is retirement for the government. They're not going to do it. It's just too costly. They probably it's easier just to get a person stabilized and then move them out of the military than to fix them, right? And one way to stabilize them and move them out of the system is deny that there's a problem. So therefore, that's what you're dealing with. That's what you're dealing with is an entity, a government agency that ignores the problems, right? And their way of fixing the problem is just recruit more people. I hope I'm not sounding too heavy, but those are the things that you really want to understand when you do go in the military. Is it's real. PTSD is real. The sexual assault is real. Sexual abuse is real. Suicide is sadly but true. Can these all be prevented? Yes. All could be prevented or reduced just by acknowledging that there's a problem, providing adequate, effective support and help. Something that the military and our government is not willing to do. So when you say yes, and you're getting the monthly check and you're dealing with those benefits, just understanding what's hiding in the shadows. My coffee's almost done. It's cold by now, but it's really true coffee. And I just decaffeinate it because my doctor said I can't have caffeine. But thank you for listening to this point, to my whole podcast. Thank you for, hopefully you'll share. Hopefully I said something that will maybe get you thinking, get you looking, get you searching, getting your own answers. A lot of this, I also have a website, is militaryillumination.com. I do post a lot of videos up there, and I do post a lot of my podcasts up there. I'm on Buzzsprout as well. But a lot of things that I talk about, it's in print, and you can go to just go to it. I'll be interested to see. It's a hodgepodge. Hey, I'm working through it. But it's militaryillumination.com. You can, some more things. I also got one on YouTube, my YouTube channel. Come back next time. I try to post on a regular basis. And a lot of things I do is just with an outline and just talking to you. And that's what I do. I don't really script it out other than I think the most I script out is my opening. But everything else you've been doing it for 30 years. It's there in your mind. And I think in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about, I'm not sure, but no, my next episode, can't remember, episode number 10, that's going to be my pivotal one. And what I want to talk about there is the contract, right? And what you need to know about the military contract and how to get around the issues. Thank you very much. And until next time, keep the coffee pot going. Bye-bye.